ego is not a bad thing. It's an operating system that is like if your iPhone have many apps, right? Ego is one of the apps. But you asked us this one app to do everything for the iPhone, which doesn't work.
Higher self is supposed to bring you joy, but then so many of us are tapping out of it.
The day that I joined Amazon, I thought I would be like working there for life until I retire. There is a problem in front of me. Is this a project for my ego, or is this a project for my higher self? Right? So now you step back, you're the CEO of yourself. AI can take over everything that our mind can do. Right? So the next things that we need to evolve is our
Humanity needs a massive awakening and a dose in consciousness. In higher consciousness, we begin to hear wisdoms from within and perceive the interconnectedness of the self, earth, and the universe. Ryan, I just want to begin this episode by commenting on an interesting aspect of your book, which I still find super fascinating when I reread it again. And it is there's this little section at the end of each chapter called A Note to AI, where you write to AI as a reader. So could you just explain like why you did that?
I think it's out of my naiveness because I have a very simple understanding, naive understanding at the beginning on my journey of learning AI is that, oh, AI will read everything and understand everything, right? They will learn from our behavior, what we type, and how we behave on the internet. So in my simple mind, I was just like, if one day AI gonna read my book, I hope they will read this piece, right? Because I write the book for all of us. But I just want to remind AI that you are part of our evolution and you are here to help us, right? To become a better human and not destroy us, for example, right? So I just write it as a just simple assuming, right? The AI model itself will pick it up. Right? It's really very naive way of thinking, like nothing fancy about it.
I feel like that's the first book that I've read with someone writing to AI because that's pretty rare thing. But
Yeah, but it's also
if
because I know that AI is like the reason I go into partly go so deep into the spiritual journey, right? I think I mentioned it either in the past episode or like to someone that AI can take over everything that we our mind can do, right? So the next things that we need to evolve is our what's beyond the mind, right? It is our consciousness, is beyond the physical, right? And as this evolve, right, we want to be AI on our side to help us think, to help us question our current thinking way of thinking, right, and expand ourselves in a constructive and in a positive way. Yeah.
like you mentioned that point on the higher self, like what is our higher self?
Yeah. How do we start? Like there is many terms I would say to call the higher self, but I think fundamentally, like I mentioned, so far up to now, right, we spend much of our time learning using our mind, and rather it's in school, society, at work, right? Our logic, problem solving skill, right? Is all mind based activities, right? And but we as a holistic being is beyond physical, right? And therefore, I use the term higher self or higher mind. It could be anything that I would describe that is outside of our physical being, right? And why I know there is our higher self is that if you think about our physical being, and if you zoom in to our physical, go through our skin, our muscles, veins, bones, and then you keep zooming in, right? You zoom into actually its emptiness and it is energy. Then science have proved that we are actually made out of energy. Then our energy self, there must be something that is beyond our physical being, and that is the energetic self, right? And that is there is this consciousness outside of us, or it would say inside of us, depending on the perspective, right? But there is a consciousness beyond our brain, our physical brain, and that basically I kind of, in a simple way, call it as the higher self, right? Is that it's the other part of us that we can't see, but we don't really connect with that part of self that much because we have been running and driving just using our logical brain and using our physical mind, which is the one that we are being trained at how the society works in general. We don't use the other part.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. Like higher self is part of you, but then a lot of us we can't access it. So then,
Yeah, we actually access it all the time. We're just not aware of it.
so in our higher self, we're going to be aware of ourself.
No, is that we are always connected with our higher self, but how often we are aware that we actually have that connections, right? Like the simplest, like even that we call the gut feeling, or we have an intuition, right? And there sometimes you just have the urge to do something, although actually it's a communication from our higher self, right? But we don't think of it that way because we didn't, and most of us didn't have a doesn't have a language to speak this way. So what I try to explain is really just to articulate what is already happening, what is already within us, what is actually we are already operating in certain to a certain extent, but just not fully functioning. It's like you have an app inside your phone, but you don't really use it.
Hmm. It's like you know that it's there, but then you just forget about it. It's like you backgrounded for quite a while.
Right, right. And for the longest time, we forgot it was there. So we didn't even know consciously. So now, when I mentioned it, now that you consciously know about it, then all of a sudden, when you live your daily life and when you have a gut feeling or when you have an intuition, you say, "Oh, that is my higher self speaking to me." Right? So it's just really how do we articulate that and how do we harness, right, that intuition and the gut feeling more, right? In our daily life, right, there is a lot of the time that is not reward the gut feeling or the intuition because it's not data driven, right? And if you like go to work, for example, or in school, it's always about the data. It's always you need backup information to prove your case, isn't it?
Hmm.
However, gut feeling and intuition oftentimes doesn't have that proof because it's intuition, and therefore most of the time we try to suppress or suppress that intuition because there can't be proof. And I think that what we need to do is that bring those back up and trust that, right? And oftentimes we notice, right, if our life there is a lot of the time the most important decision in our life, there is no data backup. It's always that gut feeling because it's always that higher self that has been communicating with us. So we just somehow like know that's the right things to do.
Yeah, and I think with like big life events, like things that just suddenly clicks. Um, there's this term called synchronicities, right? Like meaningful connections, where sometimes you're just like, oh, why did that happen during this exact moment? It's like there's two things going on in
Exactly.
your life, and then it just clashes together, and you're like, oh, it's so meaningful for some reason, right? Like you being in
Exactly.
that moment, meeting this person, leading to this, leading to that. It's like everything clicking. So, what are some synchronicities that you've experienced?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think the biggest one that brought me into this path, basically, this spiritual path, it is out of synchronicity. It is out of random events where I was very comfortable in my previous world and my corporate job at Amazon, and I for sure, like even the day that I joined Amazon, when I moved to Singapore, I thought I would be like working there for life until I retire. That was my plan, and I have been like, and I did like, and I really enjoy what my time there, right? But it is out of synchronicity that um, someone, a headhunter, reached out to me, that got me out of Amazon and eventually the corporate world. And then it's the same person that point me to a different direction, which is my current direction that I am in, to explore, all right, the consciousness and different part, beyond the mind, beyond logic. I really point me to this path, right? And from that, I met this person out of nowhere, right? And one the biggest confirmation that I'm on the right path is when 6 months after I met him and he left Singapore, moved back to Europe, and he and one day when I moved house, I realized that I moved into his very apartment that he stayed there the whole time when he was in Singapore, right? And that is like, yeah, Singapore is small, but not that small, right? And he does like all the meditation, he does Tai Chi and Qigong um, uh, for 4 years, and I stay in the very same balcony, and it's like, dude, I can feel your energy. Literally, like, I actually, I don't know how this happened. How did I move into your very apartment, right, and continue, this journey? So things like that is really unexplainable, right? And it happened the way it is, right? And got me onto this path, and I'm forever grateful.
Yeah. And that was a really fascinating story that stuck with me when I read your book again. I was
Yeah.
like, I just can't imagine happening, to like someone.
Yeah, like you couldn't imagine when I text him, like it's like his letter. He was like, "How did you get my letter?" I was like, I from your mailbox."
Well, sometimes I'm just still fascinated at how it's kind of ironic, like higher self. It's supposed to bring you joy, it's supposed to bring you lots of synchronicities, but then so many of us are tapping out of it right now. Like we just ignore the higher self, and like a lot of the times we just want to pursue happiness in life, right? Like the goal is to get as much joy as we want, but then we're looking elsewhere, we're looking externally rather than internally. So
Exactly, and I think that's when one of kind of my work right now is really to encourage people to start looking inward again, right? Where all the answers and all the joy and everything that we need to know about ourselves, our purpose, why we're here, everything is inside us, which is with our higher self, right? That have the answer, right? And if you think about it, you think of your higher self is like your mentor, right, or your guide that actually know everything, because the higher self sit, if put it this way, if we in a daily life like an avatar on earth, right, we are running around at the base of the mountain, right, then the higher self would be sitting on top of the mountain, seeing everything, seeing 360-degree, while we can only see the bridge in front of us, and we don't see any other possibility. While the higher self is sitting on top of the mountain, actually it's like, hey, I can see actually it's a better route, but we cannot see it with our logical mind, and so we thought this way is the only way. Right? When the higher self throw us something that is not or counterintuitive, right? But if we trust, that actually may be the better way, right? And that's kind of how you see how we work with our higher self and our higher mind, and creating the trust relationship, right? And you get into the unknown, and get in and let go of certain control, because those control is only based on our physical mind.
What is the relationship between like higher self and the ego?
Yeah, so physical mind is run by ego, right? Ego is not a bad thing. It's an operating system that is kind of like, if you put it like, if your iPhone have many apps, right?
Mm,
Ego is one of the apps. But you asked us this one app, right, to do everything for the iPhone, which doesn't work, right? Because it's just one of the app. But we somehow believe that this one app is the master of everything, right? When the higher self is more like the backbone, like it's the entire iPhone. It has everything. It has all the function. It see everything, right? And so that's kind of how I relate, the higher self and our, like ego relationship. So the ego somehow, because we give so much authority to the ego, like from we from school, like primary school, secondary school, university, and work, everything is based on this one ego self, which is one app. So this one app think it knows everything and it has everything, and therefore I should control everything, right? Turns out this one app doesn't know that, oh, actually I'm just one of the many apps. And we ourselves, as without forgetting all the other apps that we have and just use one app for everything. So you can imagine how limited, like, our potential is right now versus when we can see ourselves when all the apps that is available, like in our system.
mm. That's super interesting because it seems like because we're using our ego too much, that's causing us to lose balance with like all of our other body parts, which then causes like the
Yes,
entire problem of people being too egotistical.
yes, yes, yes.
And yeah, like before I thought it was
And
because
then burnout and everything, right? Like, because this little app has to do everything.
Mhm, yeah. So
Sorry, did I cut you off? You were saying something.
yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I was saying like before I used to think that ego was something that people just don't recognize. Like it was just something hidden. But do we need to work with our ego?
Yeah,
And if so, like how do we like stop making it so dominant?
yeah. Well, it kind of put ego just back in the position. First of all, it's like, hey, ego. What is ego is good at? Ego is great at execution. All right. So I would not say, you put ego and ignore the ego. Ego is very good at executing what in front of us. It's really good at problem solving. Um, but it's not good at strategic planning, for example. It's not good at the big picture. And ego have a very specific function, is to, let's say, when you have a homework, the ego mind, and because it's very good at executing a problem solving, it helps you to finish that homework itself, right? But it doesn't help, for example, to decide what major you want to go into first, right?
Mhm.
That is requires a bigger operating system to support you, to understand your whole being, understand your entire, right, self, a physical self, higher self, and what are you here to do, right? That's followed with your intuition, with your passion, with your compassion. And there is so many things that combine to create what actually you want to pursue in life. That is not something ego can do, right? But ego is like, oh, how do I gonna finish this homework tonight? How am I going from point A to point B if I drive my car, right? How do I get there? How do I execute finish a project in certain deadline? That was ego is very good at, right? Is the problem solving side of it. So keep it as that, and once now that we're aware of this language, we can really discern. Okay, there is a problem in front of me. Is this a project for my ego, or is this a project for my higher self? Right. So now you step back. You're the CEO of yourself. You kind of determine, depending on the job and then depending on the project, how do you assign, right, what part of yourself to do what, if that makes sense.
Could you elaborate a bit more on that, like on like
Yeah.
how you would do that?
So kind of use the same example, or I can use a different one. Okay, let me use a slightly different one because we use the homework and choosing major already. So now, like similar, but now you're at work, right? You have a project, all right, and a project is already, the decision has been done by the company. You just need to execute the project, right, and to make sure that it deliver by next Wednesday, right, and that is something that's like, so if I ask you, is this a exercise? If you are the CEO of yourself, okay, is this an exercise for your ego self or for your higher self?
Mm,
That that project that with a deadline that you need to finish at work.
probably for your ego self, or if you have like a
Yes,
deadline, then
exactly, exactly, right? Because it's a task driven
Mm,
work. Now there is a different project. Now this project require you to ask you, okay, we need to figure it out for yourself. I think this is like more like for yourself. What is the next career move? Because now that you feel like you're few years into the job, you already learn everything in the job, right? You want to take the next move in your career. With this
mm,
decision, would you follow? Would you task your ego self, or would you task your higher self to do?
mm. I think we're supposed to task our higher self, but most of us
Exactly.
we look for options, we analyze the data, we go out there, do all the searching. I think I remember even myself, like even after I know this, I still find myself like unconsciously spending hours just like looking outside. And even though I know that decision's supposed to be made from the inside, so
But here is the trick, right? Does that means that when you just make that career move without any data, that's not necessary. But here, the thing is that you can continue to use your ego self to do the basic research that whatever they get you feel comfortable, right? But whatever, sometimes the data exists, but your gut saying the opposite, and then what happened then, right? And then that really have to learn to trust the gut versus the ego, right? The ego usually will tells you, and how one way, really good way to discern it is the ego decision often is based on fear, based on avoidance, and based on something to protect ourselves in certain way out of fear. Versus the higher self, it tends to, because there is no baseline, the higher self is follow the intuition. It just say, just don't do that, right? But what that feeling usually is like is exciting. That initial feeling is exciting, is joy, right? Is expensive, right? But then the ego will come in. It's like, oh, but there's so many things that is unknown, right? And then the ego start to analyze again, right? So a lot of us have this interaction between the two self, the higher self and our ego self. And what we do, like, and what you do is that you step away and start watching these two happen, just like a game, just like as if watching a movie, right? And when you remove yourself from the ego self and the higher self, become like a third party and watching this happen, then you will start to see clearly what is what this actually is the best path for ourselves, right? It's like, oh, this is a fear that is talking. Oh, that is, I can see the excitement here. I can really see it. But the fear is kind of holding us back. So from that practice, you start to know, okay, this is how you start to trust your higher self, right? And the best place to start is not to start by making the biggest decision in life. Right, you do something that in a smaller scale, right, that have a less impact in your life, and then you watch that like a movie, and then see, and then be able to say, okay, if I make the decision with the higher self, follow the higher self um, intuition, see what happens, and then let it unfold, right? And start with some smaller decision is then that is the practice that you can do.
And then like over time, we have to
Then you
basically
make bigger
refine it.
decisions.
Yeah.
You don't go the first thing you go is like I'm gonna start to move country, right? Or make a biggest like a life decision, or get married to this girl, or like I said, like no, start something small.
hmm Yeah. How do we access this higher self? Because on in your book, one of the big things that you write about is meditation, right? But
Yeah,
I'm just wondering, for people who are already doing meditation, what are like more of the fundamental principles, like either than also like awareness to accessing this higher self, if there's any.
yeah. Like meditation, it is one of the best option, right? And the reason why is not meditation itself, but is the stillness that we are training ourselves to become. Because the higher self speak a very soft voice. Our ego self have a very loud voice. So the only way to really can hear our higher self is to quiet down into like a stillness, so we can actually hear ourselves.
And is that natural? Is it like natural that our higher self is quieter than our ego
Yes,
self?
absolutely,
Why
absolutely.
is that though?
It's because our ego, like it's just all the like. Why do we call like noise? Right? Like actually, everything in a Buddhist term, right? Everything we is illusion, and a lot of the things that around us is noise, right? And our true self is such a pure, and when something that is pure, it is often um covered by all the dust, covered by all the noise. So only if you dust out the dust and the noise that you can see your true self and your higher self. So it's not that it is quiet. It can become as loud as ego if we are willing to bring down the ego self, right? So it's relative, I guess. To is a great question, right? It's not that the higher self like intentionally just whispering, right? But it's just that the ego self has been blah for how many years we have in our life that we forgot how to listen to the other side of it. So by through meditation or quiet, if it's not meditation, like being alone, solitude, right? But not doing social media or watching movie, but going out, go to the nature, go for a run, right? All those like whatever activities, right? Even washing dishes doesn't matter. Like whatever activities that allows you to quiet down and be with your own thought, right? By quiet down and be with your own thought, meaning when if you're not if you don't like meditation, you just okay, I can do solitude, I can go for a run, I can do go even go to the gym, but the only thing I would ask is like do not listen to anything but yourself. So you be with yourself, then you will start to hear yourself more, right? But like see how often, if you ask 10 people, how many people would actually run or go work out without an earphone, without consuming anything?
It's hard. It's hard.
Isn't it? Right? Why is it hard? That is why the higher self is so quiet, because we don't spend time listening to it. him or her. We just need to spend time with it.
And it just feels like the world is running in the opposite way because everything is so fast and we gotta care about everything. Just the next thing always coming up. So I think we just get
Yeah,
into an endless cycle.
yeah, and it's by design to distract us, so we lose ourselves. Why? So if we lose ourselves, then we can easily be manipulated. Marketing, sales, more marketing. Buy this, do that, do X, right? But if we are more solitude, that we spend more time with ourselves, naturally, we know what we want. We actually become very clear about ourselves, what we want, what we don't want. Right? Then that actually allow us to become a better human, better leader, better parent, because we are laser focused on understand self and understand people around us. So it's not only by practicing not consuming any media, it helps both to listen to our higher self, but also other people's higher self. So now our connection with other people is no longer as a superficial level. It has soul level. Right? It's because we actually truly connected with them. Right? It's as simple as like why we always say, like say in a at a dinner table, right? No phone. Right? There is no phone time here with family because we want that heart connection.
Mhm. Yeah. There's actually a very something very interesting that I've encountered with like this journey of connecting back to the higher self. Right. Like I think in the beginning it was like lots of learning. I think it was the
Yeah.
same for you as well and same for many people. And then afterwards at a certain point, like I feel like I'm developing also like some kind of ego of being able to connect with your higher self because I can see people around me who are not really connected with higher self. And in the first glance, that kind of looks selfish and you kind of guilt yourself for doing that because it's supposed to do the opposite. But do you also face something similar sometimes?
I think it's a is you bring up a very good point here, and there is actually something called spiritual ego, and you point out exactly that, right? Like it's just our ego, our like the physical ego, right? It's so well trained to be competitive, to be one up the other person, right? To be better, to win, right? That is the life of how we train ourselves to improve, right? But that continued improvement, right? Sometimes we lost the humility, right? Sometimes we lost that the unity with all of us, right? And so one thing that we really need to understand to remove that spiritual ego is really to understand the one part of my teaching is really about the oneness, right? The unity of everything. That we are interconnected with everyone else, right? And everyone else is interconnected with us. So if I my individual as an individual learn about my higher self, but the person next to me haven't. It shouldn't make me feel better. It actually is like, oh, that's not good enough, right? Because only if this person also realized it, this person also realized it, and the whole world also realized it, that is whole and complete, right? And because we are all one, right? So once we understand this fundamental of the universe that we are all interconnected, then that ego naturally dissolve and compassion naturally arise, right? Because whatever the other person have not achieved is same as I have not achieved. So naturally we become a lot more collaborative. Naturally we want to lift one up one another. Naturally we want to support each other, right? To become the best version of themselves, because become the best version of themselves is become the best version of myself.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like sometimes I do just want to go up to someone and just help them awaken. To be honest, like literally just tell them.
Yeah,
But then it's like you have that feeling where it's probably another fear that we have, which is like you fear that they don't accept you or they're just not ready for it, or like because you see like so many shallow conversations going around, you're like, will this topic be
yeah,
accepted right now?
yeah, yeah. Then that's where compassion arises, because as a soul, right, and as a person coming in, so we have 8 billion people on Earth, right? There's 8 billion experiences that is happening all at the same time, right? And imagine if we are all interconnected. It's like this: being aware that this all these different people, they are going through their different curriculum, right? Unlike our school system, that we are all like kind of break it into, you finish elementary school, then go to secondary school, high school, right? And so they kind of break it. So the university student will not have the same class or go to the same school as the kindergarten, right? But in the school or school of Earth, there is just one hot pot of all of us, right? Some people, like every one of us, have a different curriculum, right? And as we start to realize this, then we start to appreciate everyone is on their path of their curriculum, right? We consider ourselves that yes, we are on an awakened path because we start to remember what we are talking about here, and the next person next to you did not, right? And but that does not mean they are not doing their best in their curriculum. It's just they're in a different subject, so they might have to learn, right, to go through their life, that go through um, being the best parents that they have to be, right? And their job is just to provide for their kids, and they are not in the curriculum of awakening yet, but their awakening journey is different, right? Maybe through their way, at the end of the day, they also get awakened through their method. You see, so that's once we also can open up to see every single one of their journey is their awakening journey. Then there is no separate, there is no separation, there's no differences. Knowing that every path is the path to their best version of themselves. And if we see people that we feel like that they are not there, is then that is, we have to be aware that okay, that is our ego, right? They are being their best self, right, regardless of how we our own belief. So there is always a timing, and therefore, in a lot of, like, in our community, like in like sharing and spreading the word of spiritual and awakening journey, right? Oftentimes we are not like wanting to awaken everyone, right? Because we truly believe that whatever I share, people that wants to resonate will resonate with us, right? Then that is the path. There is nothing to force, right? Nothing to push, right? And this is the hardest with family. Oftentimes, like, it's like so many students come to me and will say, "How do I help my mom? How do I help my dad?" They don't think this way, right? Even though, like, I learned all this, this is so good, I must share it with the world. No, you don't. We just need to, like, my answer is always no. Just let them be them. That is their path. Honor their path, because if we don't honor their path, we see them not as whole and complete. Trust that they are whole and complete in their own way is our practice, and is also honor the other person. That is the best gift we can give to anyone.
Yeah, so just let it naturally flow, whatever it
Yeah,
feels right. I think that
exactly.
the concept of time is actually so interesting. There's so much things that you could talk about time, but I think recently I've learned to be more patient, especially since I know my I'm an emotional authority, solar plexus, and I ride the emotional waves. So that I should just be more patient and make decisions when I'm more calm. And
Yes. And I'm the same, so I know exactly, right? It's like you have to get the emotion to calm down and wait until it's like still, then we make the decision.
mhm, yeah, I think speaking about like solar plexus, with like just slightly touching upon like the human design gene keys, I've found that there's two different types of systems. So there's one system which is like the human design and gene keys. It gives you like a rough framework, and then you have the other set of system which is more like divinity based. It kind of shows you like specific events like the astrology systems and like purple star and stuff like that. And it's just interesting to see how one is like kind of telling you exactly what's going to happen in each exact moment, and the other one's just more like a broad framework. And many people I think online talks about how it's better to just let it flow. So maybe if you're going to analyze like a big event, then you should look at like astrology, right? Like if you want to move to a certain place, then you probably consult like astrologists or something. But what's your general thought with like these two systems?
Yeah. So one thing that we need to be aware, right? If you think about it, the human design and gene key came about in the 80s, where the
Mhm.
purple star and a lot of the older system I have very, very like long history, right? And the way I interpret it is that human design and gene key is created a new language for our generations, where the older system is not wrong, but is for the previous generation, right? And if you overlay the consciousness of everything, right? And when I say consciousness, it's just more even our evolution of life, right? Imagine 2,000 years ago, and then 1,000 years ago, the way, the things, the language that we can use to describe things is very different from today, right? So the two system I would say is complementary, right? Both are right, right? And both are tool and guide for us. But the gene key and human design is a modern upgrade version, right? It's more like you're using an iPhone versus you're using a very old Mac, right? The first generation Mac, right? They both work, but it's slightly different. So I would like the way I use both, right? As a tool, but then I bring in my own higher self to discern, right, and what is the best combination, right, for it, right. I personally like to go with the flow, right, but there is certain big elements that actually they also overlap. So I also look for the overlap and say, okay, those are some really good overlap that for sure that if three systems say the same thing, it must have certain truth to it. And this also feel very much aligned with my behavior, right? So one thing that is very important when we're using these tools, right, is not a blind faith, right? It is a intellectual with intuition understanding. So it's using both our ego self, our higher self, and existing tools, new tools, ancient tools. Then you have 4 point of references to decide what's best for us, right? So it's very much a big analysis homework to figure it out, what works for us.
Hmm. I like how you talked about it was a language, like human design and gene keys is a language because I can especially see with people who look at gene keys, it's way more poetic. Like Richard Rudd likes to put in like a poetic
Yeah,
way, and
so
Ra-Uru who
beautiful the way you write.
mhm. And Ra-Uru who is like a manifester, so then he's like very straightforward, very technical, like gives you
Yeah, it's
instantly.
almost like a math guy.
Yeah, like math teacher in school.
Yeah. Right, and then the older system sometimes like I don't know what you're talking about because it's so ancient in a way, right? It's not all fully can translate into the modern language. So I think it is. I do think that Gene and human design is a more updated version of it, but at the same time, it's not as structured. It's not as tell you to the face what to do. It's a lot have a lot more room for us to decide, and that is actually aligned with collective consciousness.
Mhm. When I was like looking back at like the root sources of like human design and for example like the I Ching, I saw that the first language was actually not words, but it was pictures. So,
Yeah.
so technically there can be different interpretations, like and like language can only go so far with describing things. But
Yes.
why is it in pictures? Do you have you ever thought about that or
Actually, I think what it says in picture is actually a better form because, like because you point out the exact language is very limited, right? And so whatever we read is also have a layer of interpretation of the interpretator of these pictures, isn't it? So, and when we learn, we kind of become like a copy machine. So what we learn today, it might be very different from the original pictures, right? Because the original pictures, the first person that interpreted, and then the next person interpreted the first person, and the third person interpreted the second person. So it kind of like a lot of the time it could be lost in translation. So, but the picture itself, right? And if you look at I Ching, right, it's just a line, like line, no line, no line, right? And if we actually go really in tune with it, we might be actually figure it out. What does it mean with our own inner knowingness? That probably would be the best way to learn a tool. But I would say very few of us in the world can actually do that. So we still rely on translation, right? And trust people that we feel resonate with, like Gene Key, like Richard, that he can actually put it in a very poetic way, right? That is his way of explaining it, right? There might be another key by another person could say something completely different, but my I guess would be it will kind of bring in the as much essence as we it possibly can. But I think that the original structure or symbol and pictures, it is because a lot of the time what we experience cannot be explained by our limited vocabulary and the human language that we have.
Mhm. I think that also supports the point on how we're such unique beings to the point where, like, even in school right now, some people will resonate with this teacher more than resonating with that teacher because we're just naturally born to have different sensories and different capabilities, which resonates more with us. So
Exactly.
there really isn't one right or wrong answer. And even if someone who's like new to this might bring like a crazy perspective compared to someone who's super into the field already, that wouldn't be surprising, I think.
Exactly, and that like makes it like so. That's why every tool, everything that we learn, and even everything that I said and I'm saying today, right? You shouldn't trust any of it, right? In a way, you kind of okay, what resonate with you, right? What is the energy signature behind what I said, and you pick up things that resonate with your energy and discard things that does not, because that's how we work in general, right? So we all learn through not only what we say but actually fundamentally we learn through our energy signature, right?
Mhm.
So whatever resonate with you, take it, and otherwise don't, right? And all system will get updated and improve, and we continue to learn, right? So really bring us back to the scientist's mindset, right? And all of us become the scientists that continues learning, continue question what in front of us, right? And I think that's one thing why I really want to do, like this type of teaching is like AI comes in, replace, actually make us learn a lot faster, right? AI can give us any answer, right? So the question is, it's not about knowing the answer. It's about asking more questions, asking why that answer is like this, right? So that's how humans evolve, is to build on what we already know, right? So AI get us to a very quickly, we'll get to a point. This is everything that we know. Now we can just, like in 5 seconds, I know everything. So now it's like question, why is that answer is that way, right? So I think that is what we, um, as human, right, and especially in younger generation where school system seems to tell you that is the correct answer. I think we need to quickly go beyond that to question the answer.
Yeah. That's so funny because I feel like when you get to a point where you've mastered like the entire like memorization system, like you know how to learn things, like it's kind of time to unlearn. Because recently I
Yes.
kind of figured out how I love taking notes. Like whenever I'm in a lecture, I have to like put every single important thing onto my notebook, like no matter like how important it is or how not important, just because
I like
I
everything.
just want to study it, right? But then like once I think about that again, like for actual like wisdom learning, not like school learning, like for things that you want to learn in life in general, what if I just start trusting my mind to remember things that I will remember rather than having to look back at them? Like, is there like some kind of purpose in that rather than having to make like so much notes because we have so much information everywhere?
Exactly, exactly. No, it's a very good awareness and realization that you have. And I know if you know one of the famous Bruce Lee quote is that the way that he like the self mastery of a martial art is to forget everything that he learned, because only when you forget everything, then when you hit someone, it is coming out of intuition. It's like it's come from reflex and muscle memory, and not come from memorizing the move, right? So learning is the same. So I think that Bruce Lee at a very very young age, like realized and awakened in his way, right? His awakening is through martial art, and he understand that unlearning is as important as the learning. Actually, it's more important to be a master of a martial art. You need to unlearn everything that you learn. So you hit a very good point, and this is what we all have to do, right? Before AI, we have a lot of time to slowly learn, and actually, it doesn't matter if we unlearn a lot or not. But with AI and in the new generation, we have to unlearn everything, because otherwise, if we just keep what we learn, then there's no doubt AI can take over everything, right? But human has some one thing that's unique, that we can unlearn and relearn and develop new things, so that we will always one step ahead of AI.
I think in your book you also have like a unique framework, the ARAE, array
Yeah,
on learning. So do you want to briefly explain it again?
yeah, absolutely. And that is, like it's beyond just unlearning, but it's really take a why I put the framework together is really to for anyone in whatever point of life you're in, we all have a long list of values and belief system. Some serve us and some does not. And I would say some serve us and mostly don't. um, so with that framework, ARAE is really to first to figure it out, right? how to find, have an inventory of all of our belief system, right? Every single belief and every values that we have, and then we go through one at a time, right? To evaluate, like, what is this assumption that we have, right? Is this, let's um, do you have a value that you want to evaluate? I think that would be fun. Then
Let's
we can use
do
that as an example.
value. We do like let's do like money. Would you say like what type of
Ah,
value do you want?
yeah, yeah. So what is the money like to you? Like it's like so that is a good one. So it's like, is money something that uh easy come easy go? Is money that is like, I must work very hard to save everything? What is your relationship with money?
I think there is definitely like a part of me which I don't know. There's something to do with my past or something that still kind of unconsciously think about it at times. I wouldn't say like during my flow state moments, like when I'm doing something, but it just comes up as like a fear, if you get what I mean.
What type of fear? Like can you elaborate?
Like fear of, mm, I don't know if it's like a fear of uncertainty, like in the future. Like if that ties with like the fear of not having like enough money, even though like I logically know like in the back of my mind that I will be like I wouldn't like die. So it might be like some kind of physical security, physical security fear.
Right, right. And so if we go through an ARAE
Hmm.
kind of step, right? The first step is to, you mentioned that, I think I is a fear in me, right? And then the first step is to separate yourself from the I am afraid of something, or I am afraid, to I observe. So you recognize these limiting beliefs as, but without your own judgment, right? So from that, what would that look like? Is that I observe, I have this feeling of limitation, right? Of that fear of money is not enough for the future.
So would you like feel into like that feeling
Right,
or
right, exactly, right. So then you kind of like, kind of this awareness is to come in. Okay, let's think about it. Where does this fear come from?
mm, maybe self-esteem or like feeling like you don't deserve it? I feel like
Hmm.
I like multiple different factors. I don't know which one it is, but
And it's the self-esteem, is that anything to um, is that like, if you think of how you grew, you were brought up, what are the values that this instill, like they put into your value system?
yeah, I guess I've always had to like work hard. Like I'm always taught to like work hard and make lots of progress. And maybe in this moment I'm not really doing as much work as I want to.
Hmm. And if you change the language again, go from I am to I observe, how would you rephrase what you just said?
So I observe that growing up I've been programmed to be a hard worker and I guess like also be humble person and not take
Mm.
that much credits. And maybe I also understand that many people are facing that. Like it's not only me who's facing it.
So it's also a societal norm.
Mm, yeah. And probably the people who were also like implementing this on me, they also were fearing something. So then it's like a chain.
Hmm. That's an important point, right? So you like some you say that there is also someone people implementing this on you. What does that? What does it mean to you?
As it means like we're all victims to a certain extent, and we
Hmm.
need to we need to release it, or else, from my understanding, I'm gonna pass it on if I succumb to this fear, and like if I succumb to this fear, then I'm probably going to stick to the path where I'm going to be able to be like more so-called safe, and like do the more conventional stuff, even though I know deep down I'm not supposed to, because I don't really feel joy with it, but then my
Hmm.
physical self would feel okay.
Yeah. 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 So you mentioned something important here. The victim. The word victim. Right. And how does that victimhood make you feel?
Mm, it's definitely tiring. It's like when I guess when that thought comes up, I know it's there, but I just try to like ignore it to a certain extent,
Yeah.
and like go back to like that like joy state to
Yeah.
actually do something that is more aligned to like the higher self.
Yeah. 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 And ignoring that as it comes up once in a while, it doesn't solve the problem, isn't
Yeah, I'll say it. Yeah, it comes out like I think like every so often. I wouldn't say like
it?
that
Yeah.
often, but when it does, I would say it does like kind of like stop me from doing like changes my mood.
Yeah. 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 And I think like that's very important because you see here's like few things that's happening right now, right? There is a belief of there and a feeling of victimhood that's coming, right? And this feeling needs to be addressed, right? So emotion, like, and that feeling is emotion, and that emotion is a data point for us. And when we don't deal with that data point and suppress it or ignore it by doing something more joyful, right? And that itself, we're just ignoring the data point, and then this get accumulate and get bigger and bigger and just get worse and worse in the long run. So that's why I with the ARAE program is really to quickly try to okay, I see this emotion now. We can now that you're aware, we go to reprogram is the next step is the fundamental step here, right? So if you could now you're facing this um, uneasy feeling, and I would say if you could reframe this language into something that actually more aligned with yourself, how would you describe this? How would you reframe this feeling into something that could be useful for you?
Mm. And this is like because I have this fear of like uncertainty, and because I have this fear of having like the lack of direction, then that allows me to like drive deeper into like doing into doing something,
Mm.
or being curious and being open with options.
So that uncertainty become a fuel to your becoming.
Yeah, and I guess I can like swap that around and like frame it as though that helps me like initiate things with the uncertainty.
Right. And that initiation with this uncertainty then it will drive creativity. It
Yeah, like
create
doing
record,
something
right,
new.
right? Yeah, it will create something new, and that something new will drive values for others,
Yeah.
yourself and others.
I think one big point that helped me was also like doing death contemplation, like thinking about my death. I think that's a huge one. Like whenever I think about it, it pulls me back to like the vision of actually doing something more.
Yeah,
I wonder
yeah,
how often do you also like contemplate death?
yeah. Well, for me, once we understand the true meaning of death, then there is nothing to really to be afraid of. For me, right? So that's one of a big reprogramming is I go through this ARAE process on death itself, right? On the word death, because death naturally seems very scary, right? But with my newfound understanding, right, where when we understand ourselves is beyond physical and our soul is eternal, that physical experience right now in this lifetime is just one of my very experience as a soul. And then so death is like me moving country in a way. And I move country so often, right, in my
You die.
lifetime. So death is just like, okay, now I'm moving to another dimension or another experience of the same dimension or something else completely different. And once I remember this, then death is just like, okay, it's like taking a plane to another country. And then from that on, I reprogrammed myself, right? Um, and that become the new me, right? I accept, right, the past of that fear, right? That sadness that my parents passing brought me, like got me into this deep journey of understanding of who I am and what we are, right? So I accept and appreciate that I require that journey to got me here, right? And then I evolve from here now that death no longer um, something that I would be afraid of. I just know when times is up, then times is up, then I'm gonna move country. That's kind of how I see it. So, yeah, contemplating on death, like, it's no longer even a contemplation because it's just when times is ready, then it's just like me decide to move to Hong Kong. It's almost, except that death might not be up to me to decide, but I guess there is also a saying that when you actually get to very very high level, some of the monks, they do actually decide when they're gonna die.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I was looking at Yogananda,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
his
Yep,
death was like he was doing the speech, and then after the speech, then he suddenly like he consciously like foreshadowed his
exactly.
death, and he like
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it is possible, right, when we you know continue to awaken our consciousness. So, but kind of like back to your side, right, of the reprogramming, right? So what, like, how do you want to reprogram, your fear, right? And then from that, right, and then you accept, right, what the past experience that brought you here, so you can have the space and the curiosity to do this reprogramming, right? And that become part of us, so we don't have to reject what we didn't like about ourselves. We accept and then we evolve from it.
Mhm.
And that's the really true meaning of this ARAE experience. And we do this one value at a time, right? One limiting belief at a time.
Yeah. I think I was still also like reading like some of the Gene Keys passages. And Richard talks about how even after we hit like the city or the gift state, there will still be signs of the shadow like lingering sometimes coming up in your life, but then it will be less frequent, but it will still it's still there. It's like it's not completely like gone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I would say, if it's completely gone, we also gone. we
Mm.
we move country by that time,
I don't think we're
right?
human. But,
Yeah, because we are human. Like the life is to um, continue to learn. Like, and the more we go back and forth into the shadow to the gift to the city, right? That it's like is I think what we are looking for is not doesn't exist, but it's like how fast we transform between these three states. The time of transformation gets shorter and shorter each time we go back to the shadow.
mm.
That is the KPI.
Oh, so like even if we go back to the shadow, then we automatically can easy like it's easier to go back to the gift state, or we just
Yes,
don't stay
because
there.
we are more aware,
Yeah.
right? Because like, and the other thing is like the more we are awakened, the more actually the it's like you go. It's like playing video game. The better you are when you go to a higher level, the games get harder. So naturally, you will face your shadow again with a harder challenge. That is the game. That is the game of life.
Mm.
So we must keep facing our shadow and keep evolving into gift and into the city. And then once we get there, why we go back to the shadow? If you put it in the video game perspective, because we up a level and we go back to square one, but in a higher level. The reason why we are here is to challenge ourselves, to advance ourselves, right? And once we see and understand that, then we will treat everything as, oh, okay, that is what our soul wants us to face. So bring it on.
Yeah. I think we'll end the episode here, as I feel like it's a really good wrapping.
Yeah, yeah, we discuss a lot, right? And have I think hopefully give the audience a lot of things to think about, right?
Mhm.
To continue to um, bring life to life.
Yeah. I think we jumped from a lot of topics as well, so
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think we
and
can.
I hope that it's okay, right? Because that is how we evolve, right? And I appreciate all the amazing questions and the deep thoughts that you have.
Yeah. All right, guys. Until the next one. See you guys.
All right, thank you very much.